and refer to the death of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, on 9th of April this year. The Duke has been an important figure in all of our lives, and on behalf of the Council, I wanted to express our condolences to the Queen upon the death of her beloved husband. I also want to pay tribute to the work of the Duke of Edinburgh through the hundreds of social and educational charities and organisations he put time into as their patron. Many of those charities have touched and changed the lives of people in BCP over the generations. Founded in 1956, the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme is now operating in 144 countries around the world. Countless groups of children and young people will have come to Bournemouth, Christchurch or Poole as part of their work or study for an award, and indeed this area has a proud heritage as a birthplace of the Scouting movement and Air Cadets. Prince Philip maintained the public face of those awards and created an incentive structure for young people to take part. It is rare that one person's legacy is so profound and so far-reaching, and I want to thank him for everything he has done for us indirectly and for wider civic society. His level of energy, commitment and personality is rare and cannot be easily bottled, but we will draw upon his legacy as inspirational when we come to deliver our own commitments and aspirations. In particular, we will be bringing forward work to commemorate Prince Philip's legacy, and I look forward to seeing the lasting fruition of that work stream very shortly. Now, I would like to call on us all to take a short period of contemplation before we start our business. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. Okay, so before we move on to our official business, I need to read the housekeeping notice out. So please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speaking when invited to by myself as chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Some people may need to dial into the meeting and will therefore not have the benefit of the visual. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. If you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function in Teams. And if there are any recommendations moved that require a formal vote, these will be carried out by myself as chairman, asking for a response of for or against from each councillor on the Cabinet. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum as far as possible and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. Okay, so let's move into agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. And Sarah, I believe we have none.
No, Chairman, no apologies for today's meeting.
Chairman, if I may, I've just had a note from Councillor Steve Barron saying he's unable to attend the meeting, so I'm passing on his apologies.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. That's helpful. Okay, so then we move into agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Mike Green and then Councillor May Haynes. Mike.
Thank you very much, Leader. In relation to the item on pool bid, do not have a declarable pecuniary interest, but for the interest of transparency, I'd like to point out my entries onto the register of interest, which shows that we have property within the area operated by pool bid, and the same. My spouse has a similar interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. And on that, I'll bring Nicola Green in actually next. Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to make exactly the same declaration on behalf of myself and my spouse in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Haynes, May.
Thank you, Chair. I just want some more interest on item 10 as a member of Everyone Active Leisure Centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much, May. And Councillor Allen, Hazel.
I'd like to make a declaration of interest on the item around the homelessness strategy. I work within the NHS and have a lead role for a homelessness care team at the Royal Bournemouth Hospital, so have interest in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Karen Rampton. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to Councillor Haynes, as a member of Everyone Active in Pool, I'd like to declare that as an interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Jane, Councillor Kelly.
Oh, thank you, Drew. Yes, I just want to declare that I am a governor at one of the Ambitions Academy schools, not the one that we're talking about, but another. Thank you. Thank you
very much for that. And I see no other members raising, so I will move on to the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting, which I'll be proposing. Councillor Broadhead, I believe you're seconding the minutes. Thank you. That's very helpful. Do we have any comments on the minutes from the previous meeting?
Yes, happy to.
Thank you. And do we have any further comments on the minutes? No. So I will move those forward as a unanimous support. Okay, so we move on to agenda item 4, which is public issues. So it's my duty to advise that in order to ensure public issues can still be addressed whilst meetings are being held under the COVID-19 local authority meeting regulations, all public questions, statements or petitions will, whenever possible, be circulated to the Cabinet prior to the meeting, and responses to questions will be published on the Council website and referred to at this meeting. I can confirm that we have received 2 public questions from Sarah Fisher and Nick Dobbs, both in relation to agenda item 15, Stour Valley Park Partnership and Strategy. I can also confirm that we've received 1 statement from Leslie Byers, also in relation to agenda item 15. Copies of the questions and responses and the statement received have been published on the Council's website in accordance with the Constitution, copies of which have also been circulated to Cabinet members in advance of today's meeting. There were no petitions relating to items of business on the agenda on this occasion. Okay, so that moves us on to agenda item 5, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Board. So please can I call on Councillor Stephen Bartlett, who is the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Board. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Items not on today's agenda and information, I'd like to point out a debate that was held at the Overview and Scrutiny Board on the 1st of April relating to an officer decision to purchase barbecues for the seafront. One of the specific actions arising from our meeting that I was asked to bring to the Cabinet's attention that there was concern expressed by the board that the decision to purchase the barbecues was made without the opportunity for consideration of the matter by the Overview and Scrutiny Board before the decision was actually made. Also for information, the board did make a recommendation to the portfolio holder and the officer concerned, and the committee recommends the purchase of 6 double barbecues at 3 locations for the summer 2021 to evaluate the risks identified. This will then be reviewed in October 2021 in terms of expansion to phase 2 in 2022. This recommendation will be forwarded directly to the portfolio holder for his consideration. And lastly, there were some issues about taking these decisions under urgency powers, and the board believed that a recommendation to the A&G committee should be made in order for them to review the types of decisions that can be made under urgent powers. So that's it. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve, and it was really useful overview and scrutiny session again, so much appreciated. I'll comment briefly in terms of the timing in terms of the decision on the barbecues, and I'll bring the portfolio holder for Leisure and Seafront, Councillor Angart, to comment on the substance. Effectively, so the decision was made as part of our, COVID response, and in terms of what we're trying to stand up on the seafront. So we've got better provision for the whole summer. So it was felt there was an urgency to do that. There's obviously, we had a really interesting and useful governance session, I believe, again last night for all councillors, where we're trying to move forward to a way in which all councillors can get ahead of the forward plan and really look at decisions before they're made, and more importantly to actually shape those decisions as well. So it's absolutely the aspiration of this administration that we will work with all members. There was a special and a clear reason why an urgent decision had to be made on this instance, so I'm comfortable with it. But thank you very much for the suggestion. Councillor Anger, while we're still talking at that point, would you like to come in and comment?
Yes, and thank you, Councillor Bartlett, for the comment. The ONS debate was welcome. I think the procurement of the units is, of course, subject to a contract. It's subject to logistical challenges because of changes that have happened since January and because of where they're coming from. So I hope the ONS board will be mindful of those. But I think the spirit of what the suggestion is, which is in a sense to phase and to see the results and then to expand depending on the feedback that we get. The spirit of that will be followed, and I'll be very happy to respond to Chairman and to other members as we go forward and what the learnings are. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Mohan. And then Steve, the last point in terms of urgency powers, yeah, absolutely. And I know Audit and Governance very much welcome the opportunity to have a look at that. And as we're shaping our governance framework, I think that'd be really useful piece of work. So much appreciated. Okay. So in terms of now moving forward to the substantive items we're bringing through on this agenda. We start with agenda item 6, which is the future of planning in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Pool. So I'll call on Councillor Philip Broadhead to present this paper. Phil.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, I would like to thank Overview and Scrutiny once again, who took this through the board a week or two ago and gave it the thorough level of scrutiny which these things demand, as they always do. So thank you to the Chairman and the board for that effort. Colleagues, this is a paper which is very similar to the paper that we took through Cabinet a month or two ago, which is around the future of regeneration in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Pool. And this one is really dealing with the planning function, and it's in 3 parts. Firstly, it's to look back at how the planning function has been performing recently, and I think we need to accept with some humility that the planning function in the BCP area, particularly over the last 18 months to 2 years, has not been in a very good place. Indeed, it got to the situation when this administration came in Q3 last year. To give an example, the major applications were only 63% of them were being considered within the agreed time frame, and that is very close to the naughty step from government's thresholds, whereby these things get escalated. So obviously planning hasn't been in a good place, so that's the first step that we'll look at. The second step is what we're doing about that in the very immediate term, and then finally, what is the big plan around the future of planning in BCP across the whole area, because clearly, as we took through in our big plan and also in the regeneration paper, we've got very big ambitions as an authority, but also as a wider area for our investment opportunities and our regeneration. And of course, you can only do that if you have a planning system and planning function that matches, as well as the fact that planning in some way touches, many other parts of particularly business life outside of regeneration. There's very few people that don't touch the planning system at some point. So the very fact that it's been not in a good place is not only where we need to be, but also if we do want to bring the whole area to the level that we do want it to be, we need to be aspiring not just to be good, because good isn't good enough, but to have one of the best planning functions in the whole country. And this paper is laying out those steps. So firstly, just looking back a bit, as I mentioned, the planning function has not been in a good place, and there are a number of reasons why that has been the case. Firstly, we are still operating under 3 different planning systems, which clearly, as we go through the local government reorganisation process and over 18 months in, is not a healthy place to be. The difficulty that has, particularly as applications fluctuate in the different areas, doesn't give us any flexibility within the system to deploy staff load across each of the areas. So it's not a very efficient system, quite aside from the fact that being one local authority having 3 different planning functions is obviously not an acceptable position. We also have a number of vacant posts that we carried through. The volumes of works and inquiries are high and increasing, and actually, particularly through the last year period, the council has experienced an actual surge in applications throughout the BCP area over the last year, 18 months. Now, actually, I think that's very positive news because it clearly shows that there's investment flowing into the area. But if you're already on the back of a planning function that's struggling, it just adds increasing pressure to an already largely almost broken system. Again, as I mentioned, we're still working within the legacy teams and within the legacy IT systems, and also we've got a number of major applications that have been coming through the system, and as we all know, major applications are complex. They require a lot of time, effort and resource, and particularly as we up our ante in that area, we need to make sure that that is not the situation going forward. So as I pointed out, the very worst situation it got to, and there's a table under paragraph 7, which gives a bit of a flavour for for only one of the barometers that we judge how the planning function is operating on. And Q3, which was kind of early autumn last year, we got to the situation where the heat was really being felt, and it was pretty clear that something had to be done. So this has been a priority for this administration to get the house in order within this function. So one of the first things we've done is set up a planning improvement board, which has been chaired by the chief executive, and sits a number of the senior team sit on that to really get to grips with this as an immediate priority. And that work has been underway over a number of months now, and we've already seen a significant impact of that planning improvement board, which is essentially what I would call the quick fix. And again, just to refer back to paragraph and table 7, you can see that by the end of the year and the beginning of this year, we've already managed to turn around a number of the performance of the planning system, so that we are now almost back up to scratch, almost to over 90%, almost to 100% in terms of making sure that all of our planning applications are judged on time. But clearly that's not enough. We need a big plan to accompany planning. And that's what the paper really sets a tone for in future. And we outline in the paper a number of ways that we're going to be taking that forward. So as I'd said, that we aspire and hopefully achieve being one of the best planning systems in the country, rather than poorly performing. And there's a number of ways that we do that. First and foremost, clearly getting one planning system through the local authority is an absolute priority. And the planning function will be one of the first areas to go through the smarter structures transformation agenda that we're taking through at the moment, and by summertime we will have one planning system in place, which, as I mentioned earlier, gives a flexibility to deploy staff where they're needed and to make sure that we actually operate as one authority rather than under 3 legacy different systems. We put into the budget a significant increase of £250,000 extra pounds available into the function as well, and this paper takes through some of the ways that we're going to be putting that money into as well. Clearly we need to make sure that backlog of applications is cleared before we enter into this new structure. Of that has gone into things like recruiting extra staff. There's different ways, as I mentioned, the Overview and Scrutiny Board, where you can get extra resource through other local authorities that have spare capacity, and we've been using that, and that I think has seen why we've had this significant improvement since the autumn time. A number of other ways that we need to tackle this is by getting to the root of some of the problems. So as I mentioned earlier on, major applications, and we've got big aspirations for major applications of our own, take a significant amount of time, resource, and actually very specific experience. So we'll be formulating a major applications crack team as well, so that they will be able to devote specific time, experience and energy onto those major applications, which in turn frees up the rest of the resource. And finally, and similarly to the work that we're doing on the local plan, we have an opportunity to look at some of the areas that are causing particular backlogs, whereby perhaps our ambition doesn't quite match the planning policies that are currently in place, to unlock both the aspirations of those areas, to quite often protect the heritage of those areas, but also to fix some of the problem that those areas are really tricky places where applications are coming through that are very, very difficult to judge because the planning policies don't match what's coming through. And so we're putting some initial budget in there to undertake some planning briefs over the areas. And I said in the Overview and Scrutiny meeting, the 5 areas that we'll be focusing on to start with in those planning briefs are the Westover Road area of Bournemouth, the area around the Avenue Road area of Bournemouth, the Pool Quay area of Pool, where clearly we've got lots of potential, but we need to be very careful about the heritage aspects there. And then in Christchurch, the former civic offices, and also the Bournemouth International Airport area. So a lot of work is going on within this, and this is also one of the key areas that we're working with our new strategic partners for the Transformation Board coming through, to make sure that we accept that we haven't been in a very good place. And I think it's really important we do that. We outline in this paper the immediate steps that we've been taken, but much more importantly, we look at how we're putting a very, very concise plan into place to ensure that the planning authority and the planning function going forward matches the aspiration and what our residents would expect in this area. So that's a brief outline. Happy to take any questions, but Chair, I'm very, very confident that with the right team in place, by the summertime, we will have a very much action that matches our aspirations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for a really, really good summary of the paper there, and appreciate all the work that's going into this. I'll formally second this item, and in doing so, just tease out a couple of the things that you've already mentioned. You know, we have a big plan coming, which is going to be significant investment for the areas, and so we need a planning system that can cope with that and welcome that. So this work is absolutely needed, and the ambition in it, I very much agree with. So if we're going to have a world-class city planning department, and that's very much the aspiration. Particularly pleased to see that the extra funding in this paper, is stepping up to the problem, and also, as a portfolio holder for transformation, I was delighted at how open and positive the team have been about asking to be one of the first teams to go through the transformation agenda. So that's really encouraging for the future, and it's pay credit to yourself and the director effectively, because we do note the improvement in this report as well. This system is improving materially since the autumn, and have to commend you and Nick Perrins for the work in that. So thank you very much. In moving, so that's now proposed and seconded. I'll now call on the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor Bartlett, to comment. I believe this went to Overview and Scrutiny. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I think it's fair to say we had a vigorous and robust debate about this very important issue, overview on the planning system and the way that, in particular, that it affects developers' businesses. But nevertheless, I think the board are very appreciative and understanding of the fact that the need for LGR, the pandemic, and the increase in plan applications combined effectively to create a perfect storm in this particular area. And so I think the steps that have been taken already to improve on the situation are very much welcomed. And we welcome the programme to improve the system. Having said that, we made no formal recommendations, but we did take an action to review the progress making towards to improve the planning system in 6 months' time. So that's it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Steve, and very much look forward to seeing what the future work at Overview and Scrutiny are going to do supporting this improvement journey. So that will be useful. Okay, so I'll open the debate up to any other councillors, and then we'll bring in the Cabinet colleagues. I don't see anybody raising, so we'll move to members of the Cabinet. Anybody would like to comment on this paper? I'm not seeing anybody raising, so I do have Councillor Green. Mike.
Leader, I was not, don't wish to comment on the paper, but something that Councillor Broadhead has said again makes me realise that I have a declaration that I referred to earlier regarding Pool High Street, which is, and I therefore think it would be appropriate to add that declaration, please, and not to participate on this item. And again, I have to report that my spouse has a similar, as an identical interest.
Thank you very much, Mike. Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow in exactly the same words, if I may, for the minutes, to declare both on my own behalf and that of my spouse, and I will not be taking part of voting in this item.
Thank you very much, both. Okay, so moving forward to the vote, as I don't see any more hands showing, with the exception of councillors Mike and Nicola Green. If anybody would like to have anything other than support for this paper, please mention now. I'm not seeing that, so I'm very pleased to take that forward as a unanimous agreement of the Cabinet, with the two members not voting. Okay, thank you. So thanks, Phil. So also with you, Phil, is agenda item 7, the Pool Business Improvement District bid. Phil.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this paper talks about the business improvement district in the Pool area, and as colleagues will know, the bids are a way that the local businesses, ratepayers in an area that is defined by the geography of the bid, pay a percentage of their rates into a which is then administered by the bid, really to have a voice and improve an area. The pool bid initial 5-year term finishes in 2021, and therefore the pool bid is going for a reballot on the 2021 for a term. Now, clearly, the council has a number of properties which they own within the bid area. So twofold. First of all, we have to decide whether as a ratepayer ourselves we wish to support the bid in terms of our ballot options, but secondly whether we want to continue to support the initiatives going forward. And I do hope that all colleagues would agree that the business improvement districts across the whole BCP area have been a real asset and a fantastic tool, not just as a really good way to interact with the voice of particularly retail businesses across our various high streets, but also the added resource that they put into the system as well. And this is outlined in the paper. If the pool bid is successful, we're talking about an increase in 1.4 million into the town centre area over the next 5 years. And I think it's pretty safe to say that whilst nobody always gets it right, the business improvement districts across the area have been a tremendous force in helping to work with us as we improve our areas and been a really good critical as well as a great partner. And we've got a number of ways that we continue to work together. We've Rejuvenate Pool is a priority for this administration, and I think we've got a fantastic working relationship with the bid forward. I'm very happy to support the recommendations outlined in this paper, which is the of the bid going forward, that we use our ballots to support that, and that we also help them to actually run and slightly fund the process as outlined in the recommendations. So that's a bit of a summary. Happy to take any questions, but we remain as an administration committed to bids across the area, and that is further outlined by the continuing relationships we have with the coastal bid, the Bournemouth and the emerging Christchurch as well, which we're also supporting and which I think will be force for good there. So happy to propose this item.
Thank you very much, Phil. And I see we have Councillor Mayhane seconding. May.
Yes, thank you very much to second this paper. I have recently, in the last few months, been working with Pool Bid. They have a new chair, they have a new manager, they have exciting plans, and they are also starting to hold engagement sessions, not just with the business owners, but also with people that live in and around the town centre. So I'm very happy to actually second this paper, because I think that the bid is actually now starting to put plans together to make the town centre not just more attractive, but they are also working with us on our Cleaner, Greener, Safer campaign. So I think together with them, the bid as an organisation, we will make a great team to actually move things forward and make our town centre, well, in Pool, a much more attractive place than it is currently. Thank you, Chair. Thank
you very much, May. That's great. Great. OK, so I'll come to the Chair of Open Scrutiny. This wasn't considered by ONS, but please raise if you would like to speak. And then I'll ask all councillors whether anybody would like to speak before I move to the rest of the Cabinet. Not seeing anybody raise there, so we'll go to Cabinet and Councillor Allen Hazel.
Hello, I'd just like to say that I would really like to see us support the ongoing pool bid. I've been working with the pool bid and also the Bournemouth bid. They're excellent partners on so many different levels around community safety, also about the homelessness agenda. And I think that the added value that they bring is significant. So I would really like us to support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Kelly-Jane.
Thank you very much, Leader. I would love to support this paper as well. I'm part of, as Boscombe Ward, we're part of the coastal bid, and all of the bids seem to bring massive amount of benefits to all areas of the conurbation, and I think we should support them in any way we can. So I do hope this will go through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Mike Green.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to bring up one practical example where I found the bid to be incredibly useful in Pool over the last couple of months. You remember that last summer there were some rather controversial measures taken by the previous administration to close various roads under the experimental TRO, or the emergency TRO legislation, and one of those was Pool Quay. This has proved to be extremely balanced with responses coming through, with feelings running high on both sides of the debate as to whether it should continue, or whether it should be withdrawn, or indeed whether it should be amended. And different businesses have had different approaches, and I've been lobbied from several different quarters on it. I've been able to go forward and to ask the bid to work on behalf of all businesses there, both levy payers and non-levy payers, and to come to a solution that they think works best for the economy of Poole Quay and all the businesses there. They've been incredibly helpful in doing so, and I think we've made progress in a way that would not have been possible otherwise. So I'm very supportive of them continuing, and I hope that that practical example gives the ideas to other members about where the bid can be useful. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'll just add my support as well. You know, I think there's some really powerful work going on there, and effectively, I believe, you know, a lot of good groundwork has gone in. But in terms of, and Councillor Haynes mentioned it, we're now putting the bids together to deliver on our, help us deliver, hold us to account, but also help us to deliver our cleaner, greener, safer agenda. Because this administration is absolutely committed to making sure our town centres are places we can be proud of. So that's very much what we're going to do. It has to come to a point where we actually feel, you know, that difference, and the bids are working fantastically with us, and particularly really appreciated working with the new chair of the pool bid as well. So yeah, very happy to support this. I don't have any other councillors showing, so I'll move to the vote, please. If anybody would like to offer anything other than support of this, please raise now. I'm not seeing that, so very happy to take that forward as a unanimous agreement from Cabinet. So thank you for the work on that, Phil, and pleased to see that move forward. I will move to it's agenda item 8, the acquisition of Bournemouth Indoor Bowl Centre, which again I believe is you, Phil, and yeah, Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So this is relating to our recently the government's Towns Fund, to be the Towns Fund for Bournemouth, but clearly is centred around our really ambitious plan for the Boscombe area, total £1 million, and I believe that that's our ambition for what we want to do. I think this is a one such opportunity to take what is a fantastic place already, with, you know, a number of particularly a great community, and really underline that by the investment that it deserves. So it's a great position to see that level of confidence from our government to give us that real really, you know, a very large piece of money to take that forward. As part of that piece of money, we and that grant, we had £1 million of accelerator funding, and also as part of the terms for the full award, we got a kind of pre-approved list of all of the projects that we are allowed to cover in the initial phase of this Towns Fund deal. And the acquisition of the Bournemouth Indoor Bowl Centre is one of them that has been tentatively approved by that. Obviously, it needs to go through the full system to formalise that we can use the funds for that basis. But it was already identified in the accelerator funding, and equally has been added confidence in the main Towns Fund. And the reason to look to reacquire the Bournemouth Indoor Bowls Centre is not because we don't like bowls, quite the opposite. We fully support the bowls offering along Bournemouth, and we've been working really closely with the operators there. And this is not about getting rid of bowls at that centre, because whilst the numbers of members that they've had there has been falling over the last few years, it is still a really important function. So it's not about that at all, and we have an ongoing commitment, as you can see in the paper, to continuing to provide that function. But it's about having the strategic opportunity to have this asset for the future. And we already have the BCP Council Skills and Learning that take the first floor of that unit there. We've got big ambitions for that in the future, and indeed there might be other ways that we can use that space creatively, working with the bowls offering in the future. So it's as much of a part of the skills and learning future as it is a part of the regeneration of Boscombe. So the paper takes you through all of the points of how we're going to be acquiring that. Our initial plans, there's a lot of work to do in the future, and indeed in the recommendations under recommendation B, it talks about how we will put
Okay, it looks like we might have just lost Councillor Broadhead there. We have that proposed, so could I'll bring Councillor Broadhead back in when he's able. Going to call on a seconder, Councillor Nicola.
Utilising town's investment fund grant, or if that is not successful, I can't understand why it wouldn't be, but we do have a backup option of how to fund that ourselves as well. So the paper goes through in greater detail. Sorry, Chairman, can you hear me?
I think what we'll do, Philip, if we may, is we'll move to Nicola Green to second. Thank you for bringing that paper forward. I'll come back to you. No, we can't, and probably best is just to move to Councillor Green for the moment. Thank you. Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Broadhead for struggling on with his slightly flaky broadband. I'm really happy to be seconding this paper, bringing as it does the investment in the Boscombe area, along with investment in skills and learning, two of those things which are really crucial for our communities. It's worth reflecting, I think, always on what skills and learning does. I think I've often referred to it actually as the Cinderella service in some ways, but it's perhaps an unsung hero is a better way of putting it. And what skills and learning offers is accessible employability and enterprise skills, and that can be anything from maths, English, vocational, digital skills, job clubs, wellbeing and professional developments for people who have been either unemployed or underemployed, and many of those face quite significant barriers to learning and onwards to work, and with the accompanying well-being that brings. I was very pleased, I think, in our first cabinet to bring a paper which to this cabinet a paper which provided investment in the Dolphin Centre, and when I did so, we were very, very hopeful of getting further investment elsewhere in the conurbation, and it seems that will the Towns Fund is our route to get that. So very, very happy to second these proposals in what it will bring to Boscombe and its residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Nicola and Phil. Great. I just should note that if we want to discuss the detail of Appendix 1 of the report, the meeting will be required to move into a confidential session. So just please, if we can all be aware of that, that would be appreciated. Okay, I've got, so again, if the Chairman of Open Students Committee would like to speak on this paper, please raise. If not, I'll move to the wider councillor base and have a hand raised from Councillor Farquhar. George.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think the Chair of ONS will be speaking on this matter because I did attend the last ONS as an observer, and I believe that it was raised as a concern that this particular acquisition didn't come to ONS. Sorry, no, my error, I'm talking nonsense. Yes, I have some prepared questions, and the reason I have these questions is because I was approached by a resident who is actually a member of the bowling club and has looked at the papers when they were actually published, and there is some degree of concern. So if you indulge me, what I'd like to do is just run through those concerns in the actual paper itself. I don't intend to go into the restricted documentation in Appendix A, but if I do stray, then please do point out to me that I've strayed somewhat. The principal concern is the way that the document is worded in itself. On the top of page 33, it says that the council is committed to the provision of bowls in the area and the centre provides facilities. This is causing some degree of confusion to the members. What I wanted to know is what commitment is actually going to be documented to the period of time and the accessibility for members of the indoor bowls at this particular centre. If we look at point 17 and point 25, we find that there is no clarification there for what the council's commitment is to actually continuing to provide a bowling offer for the indoor centre at that location. So that would be question number one. Would you like me to sort of run through the rest, Chair?
What I think would be useful, George, if you can, just run through your questions, and then Councillor Broadhead will be taking them down and be able to respond in full, just in case there's any crossover. Thank you, George.
Absolutely. 2 paragraphs down from that, it actually says that the town's investment fund is being provided for the opportunity to purchase the centre. The question is, who actually owns the centre at the moment, and who owns the freehold? Also on that paragraph, the valuation which was made in point 31 mentions 2016 and refreshed in 2020. Was that pre-COVID in 2020, and what effect on the valuation, if any, does COVID actually have on this acquisition of the lease? Next paragraph down, it talks about the repairs and maintenance as being the responsibility of the leaseholder. So what proportion of the dilapidations, which is actually mentioned several times in the report, would be between the leaseholder as currently exists and the actual council itself? So we need some clarification on that, because I know money has been set aside for dilapidations, but at the moment, repairs and maintenance is the responsibility of the leaseholder. Into benefits, I'm not sure if this would be privileged information or not, but how many jobs do we anticipate it would be created or taken over as part of this acquisition of the lease? Also under the benefits on point 1, what effect would taking over the lease actually have on the bowling centre's members' accessibility and tournaments, the times that they can attend, when they can actually bowl or practice bowling, and so on and so forth? The reason I ask this is because I used to be a member of a community club myself, not bowling, but we had pretty much 24/7 access to the facilities. There is no mention in the report as regards what members' privileges that they have when they pay their membership fee, for how much accessibility and how much use that they actually have, and whether or not the taking over the lease will actually restrict those privileges which they pay for already in their membership. Just a couple more of you, please, Chair. On point 6, the consultation has also taken place with the chair of the Bowls Club and the tenant. My question is, have any aspects of this consultation, are they open to the public record? And point 11, with agreement of MHCLG and approval of Cabinet, 100k million, so on and so forth, that the portfolio holder mentioned already. It says here the remaining balance of the total will be paid on completion. When will those costs for the acquisition of the lease and the dilapidation will actually become a matter of the public record? Or do we anticipate when will those become a matter of the public record? We'll move on to point 17. Again, that touches on what I touched already. The overall offer will remain the same, namely indoor bowling, food and beverages, and so on and so forth. My specific question here is, what undertaking for the period of time will bowling continue under its present terms? Because it doesn't make it actually clear, because it says it will be reviewed by the council after the council takes over the lease. So I think the members here are concerned as regards what accessibility they have, and what they actually enjoy at the moment will be curtailed, and for how long they can enjoy those particular benefits. And point 20, this is, I would like an explanation of point 20 in plain English for the public, because obviously it refers to the protection of employment under the transfer of undertakings, but the public have no idea as regards what that actually means. So my question is, how many people are actually employed by the centre at the moment, and how many people do we actually think may be at risk of losing their jobs should they not take up an offer of employment by the council, or the council decides that that job is no longer relevant? And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. That's a very full list. And in response, Phil, can I just ask you to be really clear about not some of that might fall into the confidential piece. So just to remind you of that. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see and hear me?
We can see and hear you well, Phil.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry that you can see and hear me. I mean, thank you, Councillor Farquhar, for your questions. George was very kind enough to provide a number of these questions to us in writing, and what I have done, and I'm not sure whether you checked your emails since yesterday, Councillor Farquhar, but I have provided formal written answers to the majority of those questions, precisely because, as you mentioned, Chair, a number of the answers to those refer to, a number of the answers are actually already in the accompanying paper, particularly where it's around costs, the dilapidations, which is spelled out in detail exactly in the report, how that has been dealt with, and also the issue of jobs and the 2P arrangements as Councillor Farquhar has talked about. So I have answered most of those questions, and I do hope that that's much more helpful rather than us having to go into a private session and then just repeat what I've emailed to Councillor Farquhar already. So those answers have already been answered. However, what I can talk about in the public session is the commitment to bowls in the future, and Councillor Farquhar talks about, well, why haven't we been absolutely explicit about what the future holds for bowls across the area, and in particular in this paper. And he's right, but that's because this paper is not a paper about bowls. It is about the very specific acquisition of a building which the bowls offering is currently in, and so I have put in this paper a commitment to that offering in the future. But we don't do that alone, Chairman. We do that with the Bowls Club in partnership, and we've been working. The officer team have been doing a fantastic job, working very, very closely with the Bowls offering, in particular the chairman there, to make sure that as we take ownership of this building, we already own the freehold, so it's really just taking the lease ownership back. That we work in collaboration with them to unlock all of these issues. What staff will stay, what staff won't, how much of the area do the bowls need, how much don't they need, and that is a collaborative process and one that we will do together. But as I said right at the beginning, this is not an acquisition to kick the bowl centre out. This is about having the strategic control over the building that we already have the freehold, and we will do that in continuation and in collaboration with the Bowls Centre going forward. All of the rest of the very specific questions that George has answered, I have written to him by email. If I missed anything out, Councillor Farquhar, I'm more than happy to pick this up after the meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
George, just come back to you. Are you satisfied with the responses? Is there anything else you'd like to ask or bring forward?
I really appreciate the effort made by the portfolio holder to answer my questions, which I provided in advance. I think the only question which would be outstanding, and I haven't yet had the opportunity to review that email in detail, is when does the portfolio holder anticipate completion, and when would the figures become a matter of the public record as regards the acquisition of the lease and the dilapidation, etc. I know that's a bit how long is a piece of string, but if we could give a sort of quarter in, would it be 21, 22? You know, what sort of period of time are we thinking about getting a completion, and then the figures becoming a matter of public record?
Phil?
Thank you, Chairman. The answer is that I don't know an exact date. As it spells out in the paper, we've got two options within this acquisition. First of all, to use the semi-pre-approved funding from the Towns Fund, and we're very confident the fact that has already been supported twice by government through the accelerator funding, and also the formal arrangement that will come through. That has to go through the system, so we have to present the detail of that to them. If that doesn't happen, then as it spells out in the report, we can buy it through our own means as well. But that is a process that we will need to wait to see what the outcome is from that Towns Fund situation. We estimate the completion and the full business case will be done post June or July this year. So that's the general timing that we're working towards, but that is subject to a number of factors. As to when that becomes public, like anything that the council does in this situation, where we're doing commercial exercises, where we're purchasing things, it is confidential until the completion of that transaction. I'm not sure of the exact timeline that it again goes into the public domain, but everything we does eventually go into the public domain. Thank you, Chairman.
If I may just, Chair, if I may just offer a little bit of feedback, because obviously working in consultation with the bowling club, and You can understand perhaps the reasoning, because we have the irony of the skills and learning centre is that employment is an important factor in any acquisition and the continuation of. But I just wanted to provide a little bit of feedback as regards the relationship, is that the membership of the club are somewhat in the dark. So I would urge in these discussions with the chair and the tenant that they give as much information as they feel able to the members, so that they are not alarmed by the acquisition of the lease of the indoor bowling centre in Bournemouth.
Okay,
thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, George, and then I'll look to move on. Phil, did you want to come back in on that?
But except to say that Councillor Farquhar raises a fine point. It's not within our remit to directly respond to the members, but I can tell you that the working relationship with the powers that be there has been very fruitful and will continue to be into the future. So I'd urge you to pass that response to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we move now to the rest of the Cabinet having an opportunity to speak. So do I have any members wishing to come in on this? We can start with Councillor Dove. Bobby.
Thank you, Leader, for allowing me to speak. The Bowls Club actually falls within the Littledown and Iford ward, for which I am the ward councillor, and I really welcome this investment into the building. Since I've become a councillor in 2015, every year we've been providing hundreds of pounds in order to assist the bowling club to remain at that facility. And over the years, it's amounted to thousands of pounds. And at times we've been funding things like boiler repairs and paints to try and keep the building up to scratch. So I'm absolutely delighted that we've got a long-term fix to secure the future of this building and ensure that the bowling club can stay there for the long-term future that we were absolutely committed to. Because there were discussions, in fact, does the bowling club move elsewhere if we didn't have this funding? And on that basis, I'm really, really pleased to see this paper come to Cabinet, and I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bobby. Do we have any other members wishing to come in on this paper? Okay, that's great. So in that case, I'll look to move us to the vote. If any members would like to show any dissent, please show. Otherwise, I'll take that forward as a unanimous agreement. I'm not seeing any members showing, so delighted to take that forward unanimously. Thank you very much, Phil, for bringing that paper to us. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 9, which is a highway asset management policy and strategy, which is being brought to us by Councillor Mike Green. Mike.
Thank you very much, Leader. Highways are very much the forgotten asset of BCP, but given that they've got a replacement value of not far short of £3 billion, it's hardly surprising the government, which effectively funds their maintenance, wants to ensure that we look after them efficiently. So each local authority around the country has to publish a highway asset management strategy and policy, but although each council writes its own, those are almost completely determined by the duties under the Highways Act and the requirement that if we're going to get the government money necessary to fund them, then the strategy has got to encompass an approach of minimising the cost over the life and the whole life of each of the assets while keeping them in an acceptable condition. The result is that the strategies around the country are pretty much identical. And this particular strategy that's come forward is that I'm bringing forward today is very close to a mirror replacement for the 3 individual predecessor strategies from Bournemouth, Pool and Dorset. So we're looking at all of our assets here in the highways with carriageways, cycleways, footways, bridges, streetlights, traffic signals, and each of them is surveyed at a regularity which is appropriate for that classification and the type of asset that we're talking about. Their conditions are recorded regularly, and that determines exactly how and when they receive the routine maintenance. And that maintenance itself isn't part of this paper, but it obviously is very much dependent on the paper. Now, following the discussion at overview and scrutiny, although I don't believe that they had any particular recommendations, I do want to propose a minor amendment which makes clear that we are going to consider our responsibility to sustainability as we do so. That is going to be at the bottom of page 14 in Appendix 2, which is the strategy itself. Although the numbers are certainly on my screen, they're superimposed upon each other, so a little bit difficult to see. It's page 68 of our cabinet papers. There's one slightly awkwardly worded sentence, is the effects of sustainability may have on investment priorities and life cycle costs of the highways assets. And what I'd like to do, please, is to propose that we replace that with, and I'm going to read it out and then I will put it into the chat bar as well. Applying the principles of sustainability within highway maintenance may have an impact on investment priorities and life cycle costs of the highway assets. Our approach to highways maintenance considers the service's direct and indirect impact on our communities and on the environment. Within the funding and resources available, we will explore innovative materials, treatments and techniques that will maximise our use of environmentally friendly and recycled materials and minimise waste and carbon use. We will appraise the benefits of the materials and treatments for maintenance for environmental impact, nature conservation and biodiversity in line with the Council's wider environment and sustainability principles. And that really should almost be taken as read in pretty much everything that we do. But I did want to make sure, following the discussion we had in the Overview and Scrutiny Board, that we are absolutely explicit on that. So I say I will put that in the chat bar in a minute so that we can all see it directly. But with that amendment, I'd like to propose the recommendations in the paper, please, Leader.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I believe we have Councillor Mark Anderson to second. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I second this paper. I'm very pleased to see Councillor Green's amendment to the motion, and I'm fully supportive of that. I'd also add that we have given members a very frank and full seminar on the work of the transport side, both the strategic work and the pothole and maintenance side. And if anyone has any concerns, I would recommend that they review the PowerPoints that we produced and provided for them on that. I think it's a fairly formal paper, as Councillor Green has said, and I'm very happy to second it.
Thank you very much, both. Okay, so I'll move first to Councillor Bartlett to see if you would like to comment on this paper. Steve?
I'd just like to thank Councillor Green for putting in the amendment in that did reflect part of the discussion we had at ONS, and where he did undertake to put something into the paper. So thanks very much for that.
Great, that's much appreciated. So I'll now open up the debate to the wider councillor base and see if anybody would like to speak, which I'm not seeing. So do I have any members of Cabinet who would like to come in on this paper? No, we're not seeing that. So I'll move to the vote. And anybody who would like to show any dissent, please show. If not, we will move forward. Not seeing anybody, so we'll take that forward as a unanimous agreement. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing that paper to us. Okay, we move on to agenda item 10, which is the management and development of leisure centres, which is being brought to us by Councillor Mohan Iyengar. Mohan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to bring forward this paper, and there's three parts to this paper, which have come, of course, informally to Cabinet before and have gone through overview and scrutiny as well. And to just describe the three parts to you, the recommendations are in front of you in no particular order. One part of it is for the resurfacing or the redevelopment of two of our playing pitches, our football pitches in the conurbation, significant redo to the Rossmore synthetic turf pitch, if I can say it, in Pool, of course, and then over at the Two Rivers Meet Centre in Christchurch, a slightly more sort of a cheaper recarpeting of the pitch there. That's the first part of the paper. The second part is an extension of the contract to SLM Limited, otherwise known as Everyone Active, who run the three leisure centres in Pool, the Dolphin, Rossmore and the Ashdown. And the third part of the paper is to note the business plan for fiscal 21-22 for BH Live, who cover, among other places, the Littledown, Pelhams and Stokewood leisure centres on behalf of the council. Just say a little bit more on each of these, please. Going back to the first part, the resurfacing of the pitches, and this is a matter of public record, none of the figures are confidential, but delighted to approve, to champion quite a significant resurfacing of the playing pitch there at Rossmore, a very heavily used pitch, one that had come to the end of its life, and what we're looking at there is £1 million of investment financed by 0.7 million of borrowing, and a very, very welcome, and we're most grateful for £500,000 injection from the Football Foundation. And for let's get through this football season, and then if it's approved here, then the work to start in summer 22, ready for autumn and the resumption in autumn 22 on a lovely new pitch there. And of course, as we know, there it's one of the most heavily used leisure centres, and of course the pitch is adjacent to the leisure centre, but one of the most heavily used areas there. I'm really, really pleased to see this go forward. There's no question it's going to be intensely used, and there's a positive business case on this. The second one is the recarpeting at the Two Rivers Meet Leisure Centre. It's out of necessity, it's a smaller job that needs to be done there. That's going to be done in December, and it's a quick thing that won't necessarily interrupt sort of the playing, the use of that surface. And it's a matter of just 0.2 million there. And of course, Two Rivers Meet. Absolutely proud, and congratulations to everybody involved in Two Rivers Meet, recently winning the Best Leisure Centre Award in the Southwest. The Prestige Awards, and it's an absolute shining light, and I'd like to record my congratulations to them. So for the first part of the paper, Cabinet's approval, please, of these two resurfacing projects. The second part is the extension to the contract with SLM for the pool centres. There's a 3-year extension to 3 years on this one, and I think I will recommend this to Cabinet on the basis that there's a pragmatism involved in this, which is that, of course, with this and with BH Live, as we expect, we are thinking what is the longer term future of our leisure centres, and what is the transformation that's required, nothing short of that, in both our indoor and our outdoor leisure provision. And I'm thinking everything here from indoor gyms and facilities through to what goes on in our public spaces and exercise equipment, and of course what happens in terms of our cycle paths, walking paths and so on, and last but most certainly not least, what we can do on the water and in the water, swimming activities and also sailing and various other water sports activities as well. And they're all part of a programme of transformation that I think I'm very keen to champion, and I want to share with Cabinet and many other councillors in the months ahead. But let me go back to this paper here. With COVID, which of course has affected SLM and has affected BH Live considerably, I think pragmatism is the right word at the moment to ensure that leisure services can continue for all our residents, but equally we're not in a sense being sort of, we're not in a sense awarding a longer contract than is necessary at the moment, awarding one that's just appropriate for the time, which gives some stability to SLM and gives reassurance to our residents that they have continued sports provision. So this is a 2-year contract with an extension, if we like, to 3 years. The details of that contract are commercially sensitive, and I'll just ask Cabinet to note and approve the extension. And the third part of this is for BH Live. Similar but different in some respects, and they cover generally the Bournemouth centres that we have, and this is to note the business plan which SLM have put together for the fiscal year that's just starting now, and again, in the spirit of what I was saying about SLM, that's to ensure a continuation of the provision, most notably in the Littledown in Pelhams and much smaller but in Stokewood, and again something which enables us to have at a more, in a more thoughtful way, conversations with BH Live and with others about what is the transformation picture going forward. So they're the 3 contracts. They're the 3 parts of the paper. I think I would like to acknowledge a very useful discussion on this paper at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I know there were no recommendations coming forward. I think the quality of the discussion was very helpful, and I made several notes from it. And I think there's some useful challenge, certainly in our commercial contracts with our various suppliers, around how we can secure the provision going forward, and obviously make sure sort of learning lessons from the past and from the origins of those contracts, how we can apply as sort of a best practice going forward. And I think those, I do want to say those messages are very, very carefully noted. And as a final point, just going forward, there was a request informally from the ONS. Yes, I think several councillors got an interest in the public sports provision and would like to be involved in shaping the future journey. And I'm glad to say yes, that we will absolutely be doing that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mohan. I've got Councillor Mark Anderson to second Mark.
To second this paper. I think the fact that it's we have the improvements at Rossmore and our commitments to improving the facilities in Christchurch are to be welcomed. The fact that we're working and do work at Two Rivers Meets proves our commitment to Christchurch and our improving the services for Christchurch. I'm also very pleased to see that the extension to the Everyone's Active contract, which will allow, as Councillor Iyengar has said, the time to look at the provision of sports facilities across the whole of the conurbation. And I welcome this paper and hope everyone else will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That's great. Okay, so as I bring in the wider council membership, Councillor Bartlett, please show if you would like to speak on this. If not, I will move to the rest of Cabinet. Would anybody like to comment on this? My comment would be very much to echo Mohan's in relation to passing on our congratulations as a cabinet to Two Rivers Meet as well. That's fantastic to accolade to receive. Okay, no, so nobody showing to speak. So please show if you show any dissent from the recommendations in the paper. And I'm not seeing any, so we will take that forward as unanimous agreement. So thank you very much, Mohan. And I believe we are staying with you for agenda item 11, our museum, Pool Museum redevelopment project. Mohan.
Okay, thank you again, Chairman. This paper I'm especially delighted to bring forward. Pool Museum is probably known to many, many people, and not just those living in Pool. It incorporates Scaplan's Court, Oakley's Mills, the cellars, and of course the archiving centre currently right at the back of the museum. And of course it's in a lovely quarter of the old town as well. The project here, if I actually first of all go to actually the figures and the recommendation that's in front of Cabinet, if I may please, in a sense the big ask is the 4.2 million. That's not 4.2 million of taxpayers' money. Let me just break that down a little bit. The request is to approve an application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund of 2.2 million to approve 0.5 million bid to National Heritage, to approve borrowing of 1 million. In a sense, to approve external donations of 0.3 million, which I will come to is very much on track, and already to acknowledge a pre-allocation of 0.2 million of SIL, and that is legacy SIL that's already been allocated from a previous year, so totaling a project of £4.2 million. And the fallback, should we not get approval from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, is a project more of 1 million, which will be 0.5 million from the National Heritage, 0.3 borrowing, and still the 0.2 of the SIL. So a 1 million project, and that will focus on the Scaplan's part of it. But there's no question that the ambition is big here, and we want the 4.2 million project if we can get that. So there are the two things in front of us and for Cabinet to approve. But of course, let me just say a little bit more about this project, because this is a considerable project, there's no question, and credit to my predecessors in the role here and to officers involved. And of course, with something like this, there's a much wider group of not just those involved in the arts, leisure, culture field, but a number of residents who live locally, because of course this is a heavily residential area around the old town and in the environment beyond there, who have made an input into this project and who hold Pool Museum and Scaplan's Court very dear. They've visited it for many, many years. I'm delighted to say it's the largest free attraction in Dorset, and long may it remain so. And this project does a number of things. What it will do is it will complete urgent conservation works to the town cellars and to Scaplan's Court, which are already significant Grade 1 listed heritage assets. It will improve access through the updating of facilities and basically accommodating a greater number of visitors and providing a better experience overall. The third thing is about the space, and I was amazed when I was told this, because I've been to the museum and Scaplands enough time myself, but if you took a helicopter view of the place, actually only about maybe a third or maybe less than half of it one actually goes through, even if you see all floors of the Pool Museum, because for various reasons large parts of it are kind of not available to us or not easily available to us. And what this project will do is free up an existing nearly 500 square meters of space that's already there, and actually add a further 1,000 square meters of space that isn't currently sort of publicly available for exhibits, for community space, and for various other things. So in a sense, without expanding the footprint in Pool and building any new additions to the side at all, we're able to release 1,500 square meters more of space that can be used for people in the broadest sense. And the fourth thing is this will significantly widen participation in terms of equality, ease of access to various members of the community. And I would credit the project, they've done particular work on this, which is studying which groups of people do not come to the museum, which I suppose you may say is a kind of an interesting question. And they've been rigorous about this, and particularly people of different ages, the young, particularly not well represented as visitors to the museum, people who may have a disability, somehow find it hard, somehow are inhibited from coming. And the third people are people who sort of, for various reasons, can't easily trip out. And if I just say carers, live-in carers, it's a much wider group than that, but that just gives you an example of the people who've been canvassed around this, which is how can this project enable and incentivize those people to come to the museum and participate in what it's got to offer. So very, very excited by this. I do hope I get Cabinet's wholehearted recommendation for this. So the recommendations are to approve the Heritage, the National Lottery Heritage funding of 2.2 million, approve the 1 million prudential borrowing from the council, approve the pre-allocated £200,000 of SIL, and note very recently there's a small pressure of 17k, which I'm sure we can absorb in some form, and I'm sure I'll be asked to absorb it myself, by the way, on recommendation number 4. And with that, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mohan, and I'd say you're quite right in your assumptions as well. So I'll now move to Councillor Mike White, who is seconding this paper. Mike.
Yeah, it's a great museum in a great location. If people haven't visited it, they really ought to. It's also great for kids. And as a pool councillor, I'm really very happy to second this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. That's great. So then we move forward to overview scrutiny in the wider councillor base. So if anybody would like to speak, please show. I'm not seeing that, so we'll now move to Cabinet, and I'll start with Councillor Broadhead. Phil.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm delighted to support this paper. I used to live just around the corner from Pool Museum, and I was always surprised I hadn't discovered it sooner. It's an absolutely fantastic asset that we've got, as Councillor Inga has pointed out, as well as Councillor White, and I would equally urge anybody that hasn't already visited to go and visit. It's got a great dress-up section, and everyone loves a good dress-up, but more important than that, it shows the incredible history we've got, and it's really, really, really big. However, I've been sat with Councillor Inga through some of the emerging plans that we've got in this proposal and the master plans that they've got, and it's really, really exciting. This will take what is already one of the biggest free attractions, as Councillor Inga said, in Dorset, to be an even bigger and even more exciting one. And I'm really looking forward to keeping all of our fingers crossed that we can secure that Heritage Lottery funding. Having said that, even without that, we've got big plans here as well. And I use the word big plan, as I mentioned big plan again, because as I'd said earlier on, one of our big priorities in our big plan is the regeneration of Pool. And it wouldn't be right if I didn't, give that another plug. This is another example of how we're prioritising the regeneration of Pool, and particularly this area, alongside the design brief that I mentioned earlier around Pool Quay. And if we can secure this funding and take this master plan to fruition, as well as Scaplan's Court, coupled with all of the other plans we've got for Regeneration of Pool, I'm really looking forward to seeing what this whole wider area will be like in only a few years' time. So let's keep everything crossed. Fantastic work that's been done on the emerging master plan, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it being successful. So very, very happy to support, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Phil, and yeah, I'll certainly share your enthusiasm as well, having sat through those presentations. And now I'll bring in Councillor Kelly. Jane.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, the museum at Pool is one of the many reasons why I'm so pleased that we went through the LGR process, and so I can now say that Pool Museum is in the same authority in which I live. I don't know Pool very well, but I have visited the museum, and Scaplan's Court, absolutely beautiful place, wonderful. So I'm so pleased that we are hoping to invest in these facilities. It's rather like the previous paper as well, investing in our activities and our sports facilities. I mean, the ambition is amazing here. We want everything to be the best it possibly can be, and I'm so pleased, Councillor Iyengar, that you're working hard at that, and Councillor Broadhead on the regeneration plans. And so I very much wish you all the best with this application for the funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. And I'll now bring in Mark Anderson. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I echo the comments that have been made by other people. I particularly welcome the extension to the display space, as I know that there's quite a lot of Pool museums, artefacts and exhibits stored around the town, particularly some at the Nuffield Environment compound. And I look forward to seeing these items on display. I'm not going to steal Councillor Iyengar's thunder by mentioning any particular, but I am really hoping that some of the items they have there are put on public display and people will see the extent of the history that is there. So I welcome this.
Thank you very much. And we move to Councillor Dove. Bobby.
Thank you, and I too am delighted to support this paper. I think it's so exciting, and it's exciting because traditionally arts and culture, by its very nature, tends to turn people off and think that it's not accessible. And this paper absolutely rebuts that myth. And this paper, what it actually does in terms of our lived experiences for all of our residents, regardless of any protected characteristic that they may have, for them, this is a place that they can go to. This is a place that they can enjoy. And what it's really doing, you know, not just talking about the bricks and mortar of it, it's actually investing in all of our residents, and in particular our young people. And for that reason, I'm really delighted to support this paper. And many thanks to the portfolio holder for bringing it to us.
Fantastic, and you know, by colleagues, and thank you very much, Mohan, for leading on this. Okay, I'll come back to you, Mohan, and then we'll look to move to the vote. Mohan.
Yeah, just as thank you, colleagues, for this, and it does feel like we've got to support without preempting the vote. But I think as a final comment, it's a very rich story, and just equally, I really look forward to being able to bring forward and tell similar stories about across BCP, because we have fabulous assets. Just if I take this sort of the heritage tack for a moment, right from sort of Upton in the west right through to Highcliffe Castle on the east side and everything in between, we've got some fabulous assets, and all of which are in slightly different positions in their story about what we've got to do, whether it be conservation, restoration, or whether it be a sort of tasteful form of development of those areas to secure their future if needs be, and to bring them to fullness in whatever form that may be. And I really look forward to bringing those sort of papers and those sort of initiatives in front of not just Cabinet but a wider group of councillors as well when the time is right. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so let's move to the vote, and please show if anybody has any dissent to the recommendations in the paper. And I'm not seeing anybody showing, so I'm very happy to take that forward as a unanimous agreement. Thank you very much, Mohan. That's a great piece of work. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 12, which is a BCP homelessness strategy. So I'll ask Councillor Lawton to introduce this paper to us. Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to, before I make opening on remarks on the paper, I'd like to thank this paper went to overview and scrutiny a week ago, and I'd like to thank overview and scrutiny for their suggestions and comments on the paper. The strategy and accompanying action plan covers the next 4 years and have both been co-produced with the Homeless Partnership, a network of over 50 local services and organisations from the third, private and public sectors. The partnership has produced the following vision, which has been adopted by the strategy. The ending of homelessness in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole by ensuring everyone has a safe place to live that they can call home. An ambitious project, but I actually believe it's achievable. As part of the formulation, we considered local and national best practices, data and emerging ideas, including linking in with organisations such as Crisis, Shelter and the Centre for Homeless Impact. The strategic review was wide-ranging and then identified several key challenges. An obvious one, which we're all aware of, is obviously the COVID-19 pandemic, which, whilst clearly deeply problematic, also created opportunities, and the local response has been significant. Multi-agency aspect of this has attracted wide praise. The 3 core aims of the strategy are the early and effective upstream prevention, which means trying to intervene much earlier and much quicker with people who are potentially will be made homeless. The core aim 2 is reducing and stopping the cycle of homelessness. We don't want people to be continually, if we can help it, being made homelessness all of the time, and try and working with those people to ensure that it hopefully is only a one-off event. And the third main aim is ongoing improvement and development and sustainability. And that is ensuring that the progress that we have made with those people who have unfortunately fallen on hard times, that they have maintained and sustained throughout that time. I believe this is a good project, a good paper, and I highly recommend it to Cabinet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Bob. And I'll technically second this paper, and in doing so, our lead member for Homelessness, Councillor Hazel Allen. Hazel.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Lawton. I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that Councillor Lawton has said, and I just wanted to say that this isn't just a BCP paper and a BCP strategy, but it's a partnership paper. The excellent co-production, collaboration and partnership working across so many stakeholders has just been exemplary. The Homelessness Reduction Board and the action groups that are reporting to it are working very well. The engagement with many different agencies has been brilliant, and just the services working together, the street outreach team, health provision, voluntary sector, housing. I mean, these teams are so intertwined now, and it just means that we're getting a much more unified approach to the individuals. The work through the COVID-19 pandemic, and I particularly like to mention the work of St Mungo's street outreach team. It's just been tireless, and they've supported so many vulnerable individuals, along with all the other agencies and partners that I've mentioned. The government initiative, Everyone In, which was under emergency measures through the pandemic that was brought in with the first lockdown. It brought in people that had been rough sleeping but were at risk of rough sleeping. And we've actually been involved with 400 plus individuals and supported them. And a lot of those have been moved on to excellent, move on stable, secure accommodation. And some of these are, well, actually quite a lot of these are long-term entrenched rough sleepers, which is an amazing achievement. The last 2 street counts were the lowest that we've seen for our conurbation. And central government are really impressed with the work across BCP. I was in a meeting yesterday when we were complimented for our partnership working and informed that we stand out compared to other councils across the country. This has meant excellent success in securing funding, and many exciting projects and initiatives are still to come forward. So I just think as a council we should be incredibly proud of all this work. But I'd particularly like to make a special thanks to the officers involved, to Lorraine Mealing's team, Ben Tomlins, but particularly Fraser Nicholson, the Homeless Strategy Manager. he's worked tirelessly on this, and he's an excellent officer, and both myself and the portfolio holder, Councillor Lawton, really enjoy working with this excellent team. So I very strongly and with pleasure commend this paper to Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hazel, and thank you both of you. I just briefly mentioned I was really energised by the meeting we were able to share on Monday with stakeholders, officers and stakeholders, and yourselves, and it just the ethos of co-production and the ambition in and around homelessness, I think, is really current. So the leadership you're both showing in that is exemplary, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so let's move into next would be the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, if he would like to raise, if he would like to speak, and then the wider councillor base, which we do not have any hands showing. So I'll move into Cabinet colleagues. Would anybody like to speak on this paper? Councillor Nicola Green.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to speak in my capacity as Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board and to warmly welcome this paper and the consultation previously to its publication. I can speak from the perspective of the Health and Wellbeing Board, saying how much they welcome the opportunity to engage early on in a draft and to have their views reflected. There was an energetic discussion, I'm really pleased to say, at that Wellbeing Board with contribution particularly from our GP partners, and I found that really impactful, actually, that they were so engaged with the process, and it really does mean that people are part of this work. And to thank the portfolio holder and the lead member for their support in bringing it forward, and for the excellent presentation that we received from officers. So I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you, Chairman.
Well said. May Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo what has already been said, particularly what has been said by Councillor Hazel Allen. I'd like to thank the officers for all the hard work that's gone in, and it's really encouraging to actually hear part of the everyone in. We have actually now been able to move some individuals on who have had street attachment. They've been entrenched with rough sleeping and homelessness, and they've now actually been helped to move on to actually better their lives, and that's really a good news. And I'm also speaking because there is sometimes a bit of a misunderstanding, in fact quite often a bit of a misunderstanding, that just because someone is rough sleeping it means they are showing antisocial behaviour, and that is not the case. And I'm actually pleased, I really welcome this strategy, because we will actually be going out there, particularly our colleagues at St Mungo's, to actually speak to these people, to engage with them, and to actually offer help, because quite often they can and they will take help that's actually offered. So I really welcome this strategy. Thank you.
Well said, May. Thank you. And we move on to Bobby Dove.
Morning, and thank you, Leader, for allowing me to speak. And I too am delighted to support this paper and very much welcome it. Over the years, we've all seen homeless papers come in, all want the very best for all of our residents, and sincerely hope that the paper brings about the changes we want to see. What I'm really excited about is that this is a paper with a difference, and at the very heart of this paper are the very people that we want to help, and that person-centred approach. There is no a policy where we just have a universal approach. We are looking at each and every single person with their individual and unique circumstances, and identifying what it is that is required to give them that support that they need. And in some cases it can be something as simple as providing a passport to get access to services. But that wasn't really ever something that we could offer before, because we hadn't taken that time to have those discussions without having a more umbrella approach of a policy, and that's why I'm so excited to read this paper and understand that the very people that we are trying to help is at the very centre of everything that's being written. So thank you very much to both Councillor Lawton and to Councillor Allen for all of their help. This unique approach, which I think will be very, very welcome by the very people that we are trying to provide a positive future for. Thank you.
Absolutely, Bobby, completely endorse that. And we move on to Nigel Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The street count, which shows graphically the improvement from people who've been on the streets since 2010. And to see a figure of around 72 12 months ago coming down to January to just 13 is an incredible work of the team. I've really appreciated the updates through COVID-19 that Fraser has provided to members, showing exactly what's actually changing. And whilst I look at numbers, these are all individuals who have their life experience, and property is now continuing to change by actually changing their circumstances. And I think that's great credit to the officer team. So very well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Absolutely. Okay, so that's everybody's who has requested to speak. So we'll move now to the vote. So please, if anybody has any dissent from the recommendations in the paper, please show now. If not seeing anything, so very, very happy on this paper to take that forward with unanimous agreement. Thank you for your support, Cabinet, and thank you, Bob and Hazel, for the work bringing this paper to us. Okay, so that moves us on to, again, I think we're with you, Bob, agenda item 13, the housing scheme at Craven Court.
Again, thank you, Chairman. This is an improvement on a building which is in Niverton Road. If you know Niverton Road, it's next door to the Elstead Hotel. It's a building which was originally 2 semi-detached properties which have been converted into one. And they have over time served as a hotel and a nursing home in the past. The building has been subject to extensive alterations throughout its life, but unfortunately the building is now in poor condition and is significantly past its sell-by date. We did look at it in 2018 under the old Bournemouth Council to look at whether we could improve the building itself, but the costs were considerably quite high. This proposed development is to knock down the building and build 24 general need flats across 4 stories. There will be 10 one-bed flats and 14 two-bed flats. They will all be affordable homes, and the flats on the bottom floors will be available and of easy access by disabled people. It's a good scheme. It's a good scheme which will enable us to bring more people off the housing list. It also follows passive house principles, and there will be photovoltaic panels incorporated onto the roof panels. It's an excellent scheme, and I'm really pleased that it will be a huge addition to our housing stock across the BCP area, and I recommend it to the Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Bob. And we move to Karen Rampton, who I believe is seconding. Karen.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Leader. As Councillor Lawton has said, Craven Court is a legacy scheme from the preceding Bournemouth Council, and I'm really, really pleased that this administration is now taking this forward. It's going to provide up to 65 people with a home, and not just a home that's going to cost less to run because of the passive house principles that we're applying here. So the planning application has been lodged, and I believe, I think there's a slight discrepancy in the paper. I think at one point it says going to March Cabinet, planning, and another one it says April. So it's obviously going to go to the April planning committee for hopefully for approval. Housing provision is obviously a key priority for this administration, and so for that reason I am absolutely delighted to second this paper on its way to full council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Okay, so I'll see if overview and scrutiny or wider membership wish to raise, and if not, then bring forward the rest of Cabinet. So I'm not seeing that, so please, if anybody on the Cabinet would like to comment on this paper, please show now. Okay, so if there is any, so before I move to the vote, I'll just bring back Councillor Lawson. Bob.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to make one comment before we go to the voters. I'd like to personally thank John Thornton and his team for their excellent design and hard work on this building. It's been a super project and I'm really pleased to bring it forward. Thank you, Leader.
Fantastic, and we echo that, Bob. Thank you. Okay, so we've got recommendations in front of us. If anybody would like to show any dissent to that, please do so now. I'm not seeing that, so I will be very pleased to take this forward as a unanimous agreement from Cabinet. So thank you for your support, Cabinet. We move on now to agenda item 14, which is the harmonisation of pest control services, and I'll bring in Councillor May Haynes to present a paper. May.
Thank you very much, Chair. The paper before you sets out the harmonised approach that the Council will take to our pest control services. So within the 3 legacy councils, there were some differences in the types of infestation that the service would cover and the cost associated with that. Notably, in the former borough pool, there was up to 100% subsidy available, subject to the person meeting certain criteria. So the cost implications for continuing to provide 100% subsidy service, not just to residents in Pool, but to residents throughout BCP. This is actually set out in paragraphs 9 to 11, of which there are 3 options being considered. So in drawing up this paper, there is concern that some residents may choose not to use the service for financial reasons, particularly if they are residing in Pool, where they could have previously had the service at no cost. So this meant that we would need to offer the same option to all residents, i.e. 100% subsidy. And in doing so, this would have added a significant financial pressure to what is effectively a very small service area. The option of no subsidy would be a big step change for those that previously could have benefited from up to 100% subsidy. I think it would be fair to say that most councils have actually ceased providing this service. And while we do charge for this service, our fees are very, very reasonable if you compare that to commercial pest control fee rates. And further, I would also say that those that are in receipt of certain qualifying benefits could still qualify for the service to be provided at nil costs. I think this also does resonate with our big plan, where we've said that the community is at the heart of what we do. And one of the things that we would look to do would be to have clean, safe housing to ensure the well-being of all our residents. So I think if you have an infestation, be it a wasp nest or rats, then it will actually be a problem for you, and it could lead to people who choose not to actually deal with it. It could then lead to health problems. So a considerable amount of thought has actually gone into it. And so on balance, after much careful consideration, the option to provide a 50% subsidy that will now benefit all residents in BCP is the option that's being recommended, and it is the option that I am now seeking Cabinet's approval for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, May. Very good. And I'll bring in Councillor Mark Anderson, who I believe is looking to second. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. The harmonisation of this service is providing a better deal for the Bournemouth Christchurch residents. Services that were no longer available are being reintroduced. For those Christchurch residents on benefits, they will be finally offered a discount on this service, which is part of our commitment to improving the services in the conurbation. So I would highly recommend that we support this.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, so I'll move to invite Chair of Overview and Scrutiny and the wider membership. So please either raise if you would like to speak, which we don't have. So I'll move to Cabinet. Would anybody else like to speak to this paper? Okay, so let's move forward to the vote. We have the recommendation set in front of us. Please, anybody show if you have any dissent to those recommendations? Not seeing that, so very clear unanimous agreement. So thank you very much, May, for bringing that paper to us. I'm glad we've been able to agree it. So we move to agenda item 15, which is the Stour Valley Park Partnership and Strategy. So bring in Councillor Mark Anderson again to propose a paper. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. The Star Valley Partnership paper is in reality a technical report tying up the loose strands left as a result of local government reorganisation. The programme was started in 2015 by Bournemouth Council and was signed up after Bournemouth Borough Council's October 2017 meeting of the Environment and Transport Committee, where I proposed the adoption of it, and Councillor Lawton was happy to sign the papers. It was then signed up to by Pool Council in 2018. Unfortunately, we ran out of time to get this signed up to by Christchurch in before local government organisation happened. So we are bringing the paper through so we can try and do something about that. We are already seeing the benefits of the partnership, with BCP being one of only 8 councils chosen to take part in the Future Parks Accelerator programme. The partnership will contribute to the 5 key priorities of the council's plan: sustainable environment, dynamic region, connected communities, brighter futures and fulfilled lives. I'd also like to mention a few of the benefits the partnership will bring. The environment improvements we can develop in areas such as flood alleviation, carbon capture, recreating lost habitats and developing new ones, and reversing biodiversity decline. Star Valley is a rich source of heritage and history, from the double dykes and Stone Age port at Hengstbury Head, through to the development of hill forts, mills and villages along the river. The partnership will aid with restoration and links into visitor centres, historic sites, and local museums for all this heritage. The partnership is liaising with various bodies to help provide new transport routes and safe links by helping to develop off-road routes and greenways for green commuting. A recent survey found that 89% of adults believe that green natural spaces are good for mental health. And the DEFRA Climate Change Plan 2010 estimates that the saving to the NHS attributable to people having regular exercise and fresh air in quality environments is worth around £2.1 billion a year. As mentioned, the partnership has been in existence for over 5 years now, and there are no direct risks from us reaffirming our membership. However, by not reaffirming, there is the potential that we would not have a say in the future development of the Star Valley Park. So I urge everyone to support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I believe we've got Councillor Lawton coming in second. Bob.
Thank you. We did approve this in October 2017 under the old Bournemouth Council, and it's an excellent scheme. The Star Valley Partnership is liaising with landowners, planners and developers to maximise everybody's opportunities to create joined up sustainable travel, whether that's helping employers to find easier ways to get staff to work, helping landowners to manage access, or helping planners to design new routes. It's an excellent scheme which will enable people to enjoy the countryside, enjoy the walks, will lead to their self and well-being, and I highly recommend it to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Okay, so again, we pause to see if the Chair of Review and Scrutiny or any of the wider council want to address on this paper, which we haven't got. So I'll bring in Cabinet and start with Mohan Iyengar. Mohan.
I think I may be just repeating what the proposer and seconder have just said. Very pleased indeed with this, and just insofar as it's a great support, it's a great sort of encourager to everyone to be outdoors, and to after the year and a half that we've just had to, in a sense, to get everyone's fitness back and to get everyone active again. I think that's a great encouragement to it, but not just for the short term, for the longer term as well. Full support from me. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So let's, I'm not seeing anybody else raised, so let's move to the vote on that. The recommendations are in front of us. Any dissent, please show in to me or in a chat bar. Not seeing that, so I'm very pleased to take this forward as a unanimous agreement. So thank you very much all for that, which moves us to agenda item 16, which is the harmonisation of regulatory services and licensing enforcement policy. May Haynes. May.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the paper before you sets out the new harmonisation policy on BCP's approach to enforcement within regulatory services and licensing, and this was part of the requirement that we did this for LGR. So the role of regulatory services and licensing is one of protecting public health, ensuring the environment for our communities where we live, play and work, enhances our health, creates safe and healthy workplaces, reduces alcohol and tobacco related harm, improves food standards and food safety, and ensures that customers are sold safe and properly functioning products. Enforcement powers in these areas provide the authority with the ability to prohibit practices, products or equipment on an emergency basis where there is an immediate risk, to require improvement or changes to be made where appropriate, or to prosecute. So the enforcement policy is written in accordance with the Legislative and Regulatory Reform Act 2006, which sets out the principles of good regulation, and the Regulators Code, which requires the Council to publish its enforcement policy and explain how it will respond to non-compliance. Due to the strict governance in this area, there has been virtually no change from the legacy council policies. So the policy provides guidance to officers, businesses and the general public on the range of options that are available to achieve compliance with all the community's regulatory activities. As a council, we're committed to avoiding unnecessary burdens on businesses or individuals and to seek to encourage and promote compliance. The policy does recognise that enforcement action can have serious implications for all those involved. So, Chair, what this paper does not cover is the operational side of the enforcement. It is merely the document that will provide guidance on what we do when we need to carry out enforcement. I paper did actually go, but there were no recommendations. There were a few comments made, and the comments actually relate to specific parts within enforcement, which I understand the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny has already requested that a paper for wider enforcement in general actually goes to their committee, and those questions, those points that were raised at the Overview and Scrutiny last week, 2 weeks ago, they will therefore be addressed when that paper comes to a future meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny. So I'm looking to Councillor Mark Anderson to second this paper. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Meg. Great. On that, I'll bring Councillor Mark Anderson in. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. It's me again. I'm happy to support this harmonisation paper. It's reducing the council's enforcement policies from 3 to 1. It allows a consistent approach across the conurbation. The policy enables the authority to set up transparently its activities and to ensure that enforcement activities are targeted only at cases where action is needed. This is important for both the consumer and the council, so please support this motion, this paper.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, so I will look to bring in either the Chair of Scrutiny or the wider councillor base. Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just to follow up on Councillor Haynes' comments regarding our plans on the Overview and Scrutiny Board, looking at enforcement just generally. I mean, we have asked for a paper at our next Overview and Scrutiny Board, but that is really to describe the extent to which enforcement is carried out across the various disciplines run by the council. I mean, when you start looking into it, you realise as a regulator, the enforcement powers are significant, and they do touch very, very many aspects of our lives. Yeah. The feedback that we get from members on the board is that within wards, the enforcement issues are really quite important, but because they're fragmented in the way that they're distributed around the council, it's difficult for members of the public to actually get in to find out what's really going on in terms of enforcement. And so the paper we're looking at is really just to quantify how much enforcement we have, what areas it's applied to. And then once we've been able to look at that, we'll be then looking to see what areas of of enforcement the board will be interested in probing a little deeper into, to see if there may be ways of improving maybe the efficiency in which it's done, maybe a request for additional resources or whatever. But there's a general feeling that the board does want to look in more detail at this very broad-ranging aspect of enforcement. We're not quite sure where it's going to take us yet, but the first step is to quantify the extent to which we are carrying out enforcement. So that's the very rough plan, if you like, about what our intentions are. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Stephen. I think that's a really interesting and exciting piece of work, isn't it? Effectively, because as we're trying to bring forward, the work in our town centres around pride and all of that, as we're talking about a big plan, really having the opportunity to understand, what we can and should be doing in enforcement will be great as well. So really look forward to the outcome of that work from your committee. Okay, so then I'll move to the rest of Cabinet. If anybody would like to speak on this paper, please show. Okay, so let's move. I'm not seeing that, so let's move to the vote. The recommendations are before us. Anybody has any dissent from that, please show. Not seeing that either, so we're very happy to move forward as a unanimous support of this paper. So thank you very much, May, for bringing that and your work on it. Okay, we get to agenda item 17, which is governance, and that is for me to present. So I'm very happy to put forward this paper. It's relatively self-explanatory. This talks about our future fund governance. Just remind everybody, Futures Fund is a really ambitious and innovative way we're going to try and support our big plan and our ambitions for the area. So it's £50 million that we're bringing forward as infrastructure investment primarily. So just to give a quick recap of the main sources of that, expectations of that are. It's to support our regeneration ambitions, so schemes which lacks in viability, we can actually get forward and get building. It's for public realm enhancement, so we can actually really start to deliver that world-class city region, and it's also for infrastructure. If we're going to be building 15,000 new homes, which is our ambitious target, creating 13,000 new jobs, we need to have infrastructure that supports delivery of that. Both physical infrastructure and also digital connectivity and the smart cities work, it sits in that as well. So really excited that we're moving forward on this agenda. What the governance does of that, we've tried to design something that is really light touch in the first instance, so that we can actually get ideas in and through the system. And so that's been brought forward, and then it feeds into the existing governance structure to as and when. It's a bit of a stage gate process, effectively, in terms of when if something passes the original panel, then it can go into the full council system. Just worth underlining that at no point does this change anything in relation to our financial regulations. So each scheme will need to come through the full council process as and when it is developed. Just remind everybody of that. So things under £500,000 is an officer decision, and 500 to 1,000 is a cabinet. 500 to a million is a cabinet decision, and over £1 million is a full council decision. So still going to be full engagement on this, and we very much look forward to that engagement. Okay, very happy to propose this, and I look to Councillor Broadhead to second. Phil.
Yes. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm delighted to second this paper. As you pointed out, it's primarily a governance paper, but we can't talk about the governance without talking about the thing that we're looking to govern, can we? And I think we really need to underline what a difference this £50 million Futures Fund can and should make to our aspirations across the area. And yes, it's about infrastructure, but we need to remember what infrastructure is. Infrastructure really can include any almost physical asset, from roads that can unlock community development, to our regeneration funds, to all sorts of different issues. And I think it's no surprise that this is a method that is now getting some national recognition. There are other authorities around the country that are scrambling around and just really waiting with the begging bowl for government to have control of their own destiny. we've done it a very different way, and utilising this really innovative method gives us some really tangible ways to impact on the future of our whole area. So it is an absolutely fantastic achievement that you've really led from, Chairman. The governance is spelled out in the paper, but I would underline your second point, which is that apart from any minor items which are under 500,000, I foresee the vast majority of the things that will come through the Futures Fund process will have to be either agreed by Cabinet or by full council. So really, this is just the mechanism in place for us to do that sifting work. We're hoping and expecting there'll be lots of different ideas for how we can use these future funds going forward. We have to have that layer to do that initial work, but of course all the big decisions will have to be undertaken in the correct way. But really, this is the starting round for what I hope will be a really exciting process going forward of having control of our own destiny and really getting to grips with the ambition that we've got. So more than happy to second. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Phil. That's great. So this was taken to overview and scrutiny. So look to come in if there are any comments to make, and then the wider membership, if anybody again would like to comment. Okay, so I'll bring a chair of overview and scrutiny in. Councillor Bartlett, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I understood that we were going to make a slight change to the representation on the governance board. We didn't make a formal recommendation on it, but I thought it had been agreed that there would be a slight change to the numbers of members on that governance board. I may be wrong, but I seem to recall that that's what was agreed would be included in the paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Apologies, and we can, if that is the case, and it's not my recollection, effectively, then very happy to take that up after that, and if we can amend going forward. But my understanding very clearly is that we didn't get to any recommendations, and I'm seeing ours Section 151 officer not in agreement there. So I don't actually recall that being the case, Steve, so I'm not proposing to change it now. If you would like to add to that, I'll take it forward outside.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Sorry, I may have been mistaken. We certainly, I can confirm we didn't make any formal recommendations, that's for sure. Yeah, okay, thank you.
If we had done, and if in the spirit of anything I'd said I would bring forward, then please do let me know. But I'm not aware that was the case in this instance. But appreciate your input and your board's input in it very much, and look forward to your board's input in as we bring schemes forward, and we can really get them in front of it before their final policy effectively. So brilliant. Okay, so now we move on to the rest of the cabinet, and I have Councillor Enger, Mohan.
Thank you, Chairman. Great news on the Futures Fund. Terrific development. Coincident with the starting up of BCP, I think. There's huge promise here, and probably not trying to sound so gleeful, because I'm probably going to be one of the cabinet members coming forward with projects and suggestions in the whole area of arts, culture, leisure, sport, tourism, and so on. But it's a particularly fruitful field for projects to come forward. But equally, I think it gives us a challenge, by the way. We had a seminar yesterday, didn't we, on governance? And I think what comes with having a fund like this and all the activity and the expectation, I suppose, that will go with it, not just within council, but residents, businesses around the place, is that I think there's a challenge for all of us, including officers, to have the governance mechanisms in place so that we can apply the right scrutiny to these projects, but also we can get them done as well, because people will judge us according to not coming up with the ideas, but actually moving these through scrutiny, through decision processes, and to actually make them actually happen. And we need the governance in BCP to, if I say catch up, maybe that may sound a bit provocative, but to catch up and to be literally fit for purpose going forward in the future. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for linking it to the work we were doing yesterday on governance. I think you're absolutely right, and the ambition there very much is to get members at the front of this and really involved in shaping it. So very good point. Okay, I'll move to Councillor Mayhanes.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is really exciting, this paper. And I think when I started reading the paper, I thought, oh, what is this Futures Fund? And when I got to paragraph 3 in the introductory section, everything made sense, everything fell into place because this fund is being linked to our big plan, our vision. And so it was great that we came up with a plan, we had our vision, and now with the governance structure and the funding, we are going to actually be able to deliver it. And it's actually going to be so exciting because we could create up to 13,000 jobs across all sectors of our economy. And on top of that, deliver on the 5 big projects that we have set out in our vision. So I really, really welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that support. And I'll move to Councillor Nigel Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This fund is very welcome with the badging of infrastructure. I clearly over here in Christchurch, and the A35 is a major artery which crosses right the way through our conurbation. And there are certain aspects there which I'm sure that people from Christchurch would actually want to put forward for funding for specific infrastructure and highway works, which will actually open up a lot of communication for people who go across the conurbation for work, but also actually open up areas which in the future local plan will identify opportunities for housing, and that will actually give the impetus for growth in the wider conurbation. So I really do welcome the future fund. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nigel. And that's it's a good point, isn't it, to tease out effectively that this needs to be something that lands absolutely across conurbation and for all of our areas. So I very much welcome particularly our lead members involved in regeneration, both for Poole, Christchurch and Bournemouth, to take a really keen interest in this and to work with the communities to bring forward some ideas and suggestions around it, so we can feed into this governance process, so that the benefits of this really are felt across the conurbation, and we lift the whole conurbation. So thank you very much for that. I don't have any other members wishing to speak on this paper, so the recommendations are in the document. If anybody has any dissent to those, please show now. I'm not seeing that, so again, very pleased to take that forward as a unanimous support from Cabinet. Thank you very much. Okay, so we now move to the, so just note out, I'm just about to move to the forward plan, but we do have an urgent item coming after it. So the forward plan isn't the usual close of the meeting. So at agenda item 18, it calls on me to advise that the latest published version of the forward plan is attached to the agenda. Would anybody like to make any comment on that? I've got Councillor Nigel Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Leader. On page 348 of the forward plan, with no specific date, is a very small matter, but not small matter for the parties involved. It's under a subject heading of adoption of Ducking Store Walk, Christchurch. This is where there is a call for a walkway alongside the mill stream in Christchurch to be adopted by the council, and enabling major repairs and renovation works to go ahead. There are 4 parties who are actually going to be working together, and heads of terms effectively have been agreed for funding between BCP, residents, a hotel, and one other party, Christchurch Town Council. If that could be please brought forward on the agenda for the next Cabinet meeting, it will enable the works of repair and also the opening of this important walkway, which is more or less a heritage walkway. I'm sure it would be much appreciated by people in Christchurch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. And I'll bring in Councillor Mike Green. Mike.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm not sure that this is an appropriate place to discuss something which is in confidential financial discussions at the moment, but I can assure that at the appropriate stage, the appropriate decision-making process will be followed if there are to be changes made, whether they are Cabinet decisions or whether they are not, whether indeed they are officer decisions or member decisions, is something outside that. But I really don't think that this is the appropriate time to be or place to be discussing that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I hear that on a detail, but I also hear the ambition from Nigel, Councillor Brooks, to bring this forward at some pace. So very look forward to taking that offline and seeing what the right point of bringing that to decision is. So thank you both, and I'll move on to Councillor Mark Anderson. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. It's on the same item. It's just a technical comment. The actual cabinet portfolio holder who's responsible is actually, as Mike has intimated, himself rather than me, as it's strategic highways rather than normal highway repairs.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that clarification. That's useful. Okay, so then that brings us on to agenda item 19, which is the Special Educational Needs and Disability Capital Investment, the Bournemouth Learning Centre, Long Speed Special School. So I will bring in the portfolio holder, Councillor Nicola Green. Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder whether it might be appropriate at this stage to go first to the monitoring officer and the chief executive to set out the constitutional framework under which we're taking this this paper.
Thank you very much for reminding me, Nicola. Susan Sykes, our monitoring officer, please explain the situation as to why we're receiving this urgent paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Green, and good afternoon, Cabinet. Yes, this paper has been brought in this timescale because of the need to provide school places by the start of the September academic year, and in order for that to be done, construction work needs to start within a very short period of time and get going. So there was a choice constitutionally between the Chief Executive using his urgency powers in their entirety in order to take the decision, or for it to first come to Cabinet for Cabinet to view and then to request the Chief Executive to use his urgency powers. I'll go through it in a little more detail now, but the next council meeting at which this decision could have been taken is the 2nd of June, and we really need to begin construction within the next week. So it couldn't have waited till the 2nd of June, otherwise our statutory duty to supply those school places would not have been met. So, general exception rule, we published a notice that this late agenda item would be coming to Cabinet, and then Cabinet will be requesting the Chief Executive to use his urgency powers under the Constitution, Part 3:15, to take the decision ahead of full council, and then he will, of course, report to full council that he has taken that decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. And Graham, would you like to add anything to that introduction?
Thanks, Lou. Just to add, I guess it's not an ideal position. We're halfway through doing some works. We had an initial budget for it. The works can't be completed within that, and the reasons for that are set out in paragraphs sort of 14 onwards in the report. And yeah, there are limited choices here. Really, I think this is something which I think is legitimate to be considered urgently by the Cabinet. However, the decision itself is too big for the Cabinet, therefore would need to go to Council or use my emergency powers in the best interest of the Council. So the proposal is for Cabinet to take a view on that and to recommend, if appropriate, that I use my emergency powers. The downside of that, of course, is the issue about overview and scrutiny being slightly excluded because this is a late paper. I'm sure we'll hear some views on that, but I'm happy to take the Cabinet's views on board in considering the best way of taking this decision.
Thank you very much, Graham, and I'll just pass back to our monitoring officer, Susan Sykes. Susan.
Apologies, Leader. I ought to have mentioned in my introduction that as part of the general exception process, we are required to inform the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, which we have done. I know that doesn't overcome all the difficulties, but the Chairman has been informed. Thank you.
Yeah, and also, thank you, Susan. Also keen to hear if we've had contact with the Chair of the Children's Overview and Scrutiny panel as well, which I think would be relevant. Okay, Councillor Green, Nicola, are you on the basis of that? Are you happy to move forward and bring the paper to us, Nicola?
Absolutely, Lisa. Yes, thank you. And I will, for the main part, focus on the proposal itself, and then the other issues which sit around it. So I am, of course, always happy to be bringing a capital project to Cabinet for an expansion and an improvement to the school building, and especially so when it's providing places for some of our most vulnerable children who require that very specialist facilities to be able to reach their own potential. Bournemouth Learning Centre, which is a building well known to many of us. It's a great location, set as it is in the Slades Farm open space, forming part of a large educational campus with a couple of schools and other specialist provision. The facility, as proposed, will now provide 54 places and will be operated as a satellite academy, which was judged only last February, just immediately prior to the COVID pandemic, as outstanding, which is the highest grade that Ofsted can bestow. It also sits within the Ambitions Academy Trust umbrella, and that has expertise in both mainstream school, but very particularly in working with our children with the greatest need. The background to this, of course, is the pressures within the high needs block of the Dedicated Schools grant, which is well known as being reported to Cabinet and to Council. This provides the revenue funding for all education provision for our children under 16, and pressures within the high needs block therefore impact on all our children in both mainstream and specialist provision. This proposal will mean that fewer children need to go either out of the area or into more expensive, independent, non-maintained special schools, bringing forward cost avoidance for the future, and crucially, educating and providing social opportunities for these vulnerable children much closer to home and within their own communities. The overall budget is now set at £1.25 million, and the 54 places this will provide equates to about £23,000 per place. And with national benchmarking, you'll see that a refurbishment would expect to sit in the realm of £42,500 per place. So the proposal is therefore affordable within the capital programme. And while not mentioned in the paper, I would like to mention that the council has recently been awarded £2.3 million further for our special educational needs and disability capital programme. And as we know, government don't send money where there isn't need. It's fair to say, and the Chief Executive has touched on this, that the journey up until this point hasn't been entirely smooth. The original proposal had insufficient focus on the research and resource, but working with the Academy and their contractor, this proposal now reflects the needs of the wider sufficiency agenda and the specific needs of the cohort, and will deliver excellent facilities to meet the needs of those children. But the outcome has taken time to arrive at. While it's not referenced in the paper, I want to provide members with an update on the governance arrangements, which will examine the delivery of this project and therefore I hope give some assurance going forward. The High Needs Recovery Board will monitor both the revenue stream of the Dedicated Schools grant and the Special Educational Needs and Disability Capital Investment. The board will be chaired by the Chief Executive, and it will include the Director of Children's Services, finance officers, and elected members will be represented by yourself, Leader, and myself as the portfolio holder for education. The terms of reference are still being finalised, but I would expect that it will be clearly accountable both to the Schools Forum and to Council via the budget monitoring reports. The Chief Executive and the Monitoring Officer have set out the constitutional arrangements by which this proposal is being taken forward, but I do want to acknowledge the appropriate interest of Overview and Scrutiny members. Both chairs of the Overview and Scrutiny Board and the Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee are here, and I know that they will have some questions. Children's Services have had this proposal on their work programme, and the ongoing work on SEND provision is part of their remit. I will do my best, of course, to answer questions from them today and those that they've been forwarded by their members. However, of course, I will also work with them at any subsequent meeting they may wish to hold. I did want to mention, Chairman, to note the comments that the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Board made earlier in the meeting in relation to a different paper about a potential review of the Constitution and work being taken forward by the Audit and Governance Board. And I wouldn't want this to be taken in any way as a reflection on my view on what the outcome of that should be. However, we are working within the existing constitutional framework, and this, where we've got to today, is the outcome of officers and members working at pace to deliver the best result for our young people. So in sum, I do believe that this proposal is a sound one. It will deliver much needed places for a cohort of our most vulnerable children. It will provide value for money. those children will be supported by an outstanding provider and in surroundings with which they can be proud of, and they deserve nothing less. Thank you, Leader.
Absolutely, Nicola. Thank you very much for that full explanation, and also really highlighting the positives, and particularly the value for money for what is a much needed provision. I've moved to Councillor Mike White, who I believe is seconded. Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As you've heard, this is a really important and urgent project for some of our most vulnerable children and young people. So I'm very happy to second this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. What I'll do now is I'll bring in the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, and then the Chairman of the Children's Overview and Scrutiny panel. So I'll start with Councillor Bartlett. Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the Bournemouth Learning Centre, and in fact, I think the paper was originally went through Overview and Scrutiny. And there was actually no question that this was a very good idea. To convert the Bournemouth Learning Centre to a school. It seemed to make a lot of sense. But of course, at the time, a budget of 500k was allocated and agreed. I believe within that there was a 15% contingency. So having understood the background to it, and it is actually very near to where I live, so I'm very familiar with it. I was a bit surprised, if not taken aback last week, to be told that another 750k would be required, and of course I was in the knowledge that the school was due to open actually within the next 1 or 2 weeks. So there were some fairly obvious contradictions there. I didn't actually get the paper until Monday afternoon, so I've not been able to present it to the Overview and Scrutiny Board, which is what I would like to have done. But I have decided to take it to Overview and Scrutiny Board on the 17th of May, albeit this will be after the decision will have been made. Because there are a number of obvious questions that come out of the paper that's now been presented, particularly with regard to the cost and the timing of it. What I will say is just to reassure Susan Zeiss, if I may, that I actually went up to the building yesterday, and there are builders beavering away all over the place, and so they're obviously very keen on getting it done. And I don't think there's any question that the need and for this work is needed. It absolutely is needed, and it's a really good idea to use this facility to do it. But there are some issues regarding where we are now in terms of the financing and the timescales and the management of the process up until this point. And I think that those are legitimate concerns that the Overview and Scrutiny Board should be looking at, and they will look at those on the 17th of May. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Clearly understand the points you're making, so thank you for laying them. Okay, so I'll move on to the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, Councillor Richard Burton. Richard, good to see you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for letting me speak on this. And to a certain extent, what I say, there's going to be no surprises. I think we all know where we're coming from here. This has been our forward plan and children's ONS. So some of my members already have a sort of overview on this, and I did email them as soon as the paper came out, and I've had a few replies, so I can speak both for myself and the replies that I've had. But unfortunately, as has been stated, we've had very little time to look at it. The feeling, as Freddie, we like the project. We are very much in support of it. In discussions previously, we think it is good. There's clear advantages for the pupils schooling within BCP, less time travelling, less disruption, being educated in their own community, and the overall costs seem to be medium term still very good value. So we're very happy. And we also feel that there's a very good chance of very high quality education being received by these children at the venue. And personally, some of the overspend I was quite pleased to see to actually looking at more places, because I know we've discussed this in the past, and I think that's a great way to spend some extra money. However, as we said, the overspend is huge. And I know that there are some questions that my committee would like to have asked about this. there is some frustration that we weren't given this data earlier, and at the time between June and February this year, that the site visits hadn't taken place, and some evaluation of the costings. So I do feel that we'd like to see some further scrutiny as the project develops, and we welcome some more input to Children's ONS on this. I also know that at least, just to be clear, my committee is not just council members, but because we have cooperative members as well, and I've had some emails from them as well. And I know one of them is particularly concerned about the children with EHCPs being educated in mainstream schools as a way of, she sees it as saving some money, and the actual costs, extra costs for the schools, and how that will be budgeted for, whether the funding will follow the pupils. I mean, I don't want to needlessly criticise this, because I say that the overall feeling is very good, but I do feel that we'd like to continue to add some extra transparency back into this, and have a bit more look at why the overspend happened.
Yeah, thank you very much, Richard. And just to sort of underline from an administration perspective, before I bring potentially Councillor Green back in, we completely concur with you, and we absolutely, need to get this in front of overview and scrutiny in enough time going forward, and that's certainly been our reflection back to officers in terms of how we've gotten to here. Okay, Nicola, would anything you'd like to come back on either of those comments before I open up to the wider cabinet, or just sum up at the end?
Happy to sum up at the end, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I just move to the wider cabinet and see if anybody would like to, please raise if you would like to speak on this paper. I've got Councillor Bobby Duff. Bobby.
Thank you, and I suppose in all of these discussions we shouldn't forget, and we haven't forgotten so far in what people have said, is the children and the families who are hoping to go to this school. It's an incredible provision. It's amazing to have it on their doorsteps. It will provide so many opportunities, not in terms of what the school offer, but being part of the community, remaining at home and doing all the things that our mainstream children do, the extracurricular clubs and everything else. And for that reason, let us also not forget that these are SEND children for whom anxiety is very, very high. And for that reason alone, I really thank and commend Nicola Green for all of her attention to all of this, the incredible hard work that both yourself as the leader and officers have put in as well, in ensuring that we can secure this provision and open up so that these children can benefit from this outstanding provision. So thank you. Yeah,
thank you, Bobby. And it just, I'm really pleased as well in terms of the investment going in here, because it just sort of, in our budget we brought forward the £10 million capital fund for SEN children, and the ambition absolutely has to be there that we create excellent placements that really are what these children deserve. Okay, fine. So I don't have anybody else showing to speak, so I'll come back to Councillor Green to sum up, and then we will move to the decision. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to colleagues for their comments. If I may respond to the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Board, Councillor Bartlett, I shared some of your surprise when I started looking into this proposal, and I'm perfectly happy to just come back to your panel and set out that in more detail if it would be helpful to you. Councillor Burton, thank you very much for the support and the constructive challenge and the real added value that your panel give to all work around children's services, but particularly on the SEND agenda. I'm not sure I've completely understood the question from one of your panel members, but I will have a go, and if it needs further work, please let me know, and I shall follow up. Does money follow the child? Yes, essentially. Where I think the question may be was around whether we should be investing in mainstream schools in order to bring the costs down and to bring our children more in line with their peers. If that was the question, then the answer is absolutely yes. But there are two parts of the work on, well, there are many parts of the work on the high needs block. One is clearly for as many of our children as is appropriate for and as can be supported to be educated within mainstream education. Slightly further along the scale from that is to have local high quality provision. So we are not only spending less, but we are sending fewer children out of the area and onto the independent sector and moving them out of their community. So those two things are inextricably linked, but they are slightly separate. And just one other thing, Leader, if I might just pick up on your comments about the £10 million investment fund. While this particular proposal is one which was already underway and will be funded from within existing resources, and that's before we get to the £2.3 million that we've received in addition, we are undertaking a wider piece of work which we'll be bringing back to Cabinet, and will absolutely have the opportunity to go through Children's Services overview and scrutiny about our sufficiency strategy for all our children with SEND. I think that's all the comments I have to make at this stage. I realise that this isn't the end of the conversation, and there is clearly work which needs to continue and some further deep dives, and I think we'll come back to it in a number of ways. But for today, I don't think I have anything to add other than to formally move the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Nicola. It's much appreciated. Okay, so those recommendations are in front of us. Please, would any member raise if they would like to show consent to them? I'm not seeing that, so very happy to take that forward as a unanimous decision. So thank you, Nicola, for leading on that, and thank you, officers, for getting it to us in the fashion that we managed to. Okay, thank you. So that's the end of our meeting, everybody. So just calls on me to thank everybody for their attendance, and particularly any members of the public who are watching us either live or catching up. Thank you very much. We've had a really exciting agenda, really full and packed agenda. Talked to a lot of ambition, very much for our place and our people and our children particularly. So thank you everybody for their involvement, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Cheers.
you.